Hey, everybody, welcome back to this episode of Real Management Talk with LJ and Jocelyn. We're so excited that you're here, and we thank you for taking the time to listen to us. Now, just as a reminder, this is us, raw and unedited. So we're not real big on fancy cameras, fancy mics, fancy anything. So because we like just being us, and the truth is we're not in a studio together. Now someday we may surprise you and actually get into a studio together, but this is just really us. You know, we're learning how to use mics. We've upgraded our mics and our cameras.
Yes.
But you know, we're still learning how to work with them and use them. That's half the fun of doing this. Don't you think, LJ?
Amen.
Amen. Yeah, it's really half the fun. Well, so what do you think we should talk about today?
We've got so much to talk about. You know, I think the biggest conversation topic, I think, because of the times and, you know, this great resignation that's looming over us and this coronavirus pandemic with the Omicron variant looming over us. I think it's time to talk about, we have to relearn so many things, but I think the biggest issue is the sense of instant gratification and entitlement. We have to really think about that, especially in the context of running nonprofit and for-profit businesses, because there is a sacrificial component to doing both, right, that a lot of people really just don't, they can't fathom it, but they really don't appreciate what that sacrifice looks like in real time. You know, you think about people like, you already know the story that I had of the museum and running the museum, literally $0 budget, running that and tacit growth strategies at the same exact time, full time. I was working 14-hour days, 14-hour days. Remember, we talked about that.
Right.
And that was literally me saying, this mission, both missions for both the nonprofit and the for-profit, this is so much bigger than me. I have to sacrifice to make these two things happen and make them grand. You know, the museum is multi-million-dollar nonprofit now. Tacit, we're working on it, right? So I'm like, but I think about that, and I think about that sacrifice, and I get sad because our culture and the generations to come, everything is about money and everything is about instant gratification. It's not about the process. It's not about trusting the process. It's about just coming out here and getting the quickest results possible. And that is not sustainable. That's not going to work. You know, that ruins university. You know, when we're teaching these classes, it really compromises the material that we can cover and the rigor of the course. That we can't have a rigorous course because the student is going to come to me and say, am I going to get an A? And if they don't get the A, they fixate on finding ways to get the A. So it's playing this game of politics. Your parents are calling up to the university, calling to my boss's bosses, registrar's office, and they get those A's. But ultimately, we all lose because of this culture of this instant gratification, where in which people don't understand what it takes to get, you know, make things happen and keep them in place. You know, it's terrifying. It's a terrifying situation that really saddens me, because I think that there's the toxicity that we've already known in the nonprofit sector, in the nonprofit industrial complex, as we like to call it. That toxicity does not seem to be getting better. It seems to be worsening. And it's because, again, of this culture that we have that we can't seem to break.
That's a lot. As you were talking, I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm picturing things in my head about how, and one thing that you were discussing real early on, and what popped into my head has to do with a lot about, Proverbs. A lot in Proverbs itself talks a lot about really chasing money and things that, wisdom, listening to wisdom and not chasing that. And there is really, a lot of that, like chasing money and always hustling and doing this, really has taken over in the last couple of years. I mean, like you see it everywhere. And, the one thing is, at least in the way that I believe, is God means for us to be wealthy, and wealth, as we could discuss on a whole different thing, is way more than just money. But one of the things is, what he means is that for us to be giving. This is the way that I look at it. And so when it's okay if you have money, as long as you're turning it back around, as you and I both believe, and you're giving and you're investing and like that. And that doesn't mean that you can't, have whatever type of house you want or car you want, or, knock yourself out if you want to go buy big, expensive yachts and boats and everything like this, right? I mean, if that's your thing, fine. But at the end of the day, it's about being able to pour into others. That's the whole reason you have that resource. And there is this whole sense, like you said, of, it's almost like entitlement of like, oh, I went to school, oh, I should get, in your example, and we all know that it happens, parents, and we call those guys helicopter parents. I do not understand helicopter parenting. My 15-year-old, my husband, I've told him he's both blessed and cursed, because he has older parents, so we've kind of been there, done that type thing. And on the other hand, he's also getting lessons that a lot of his peers aren't necessarily giving. And he doesn't always think that, of course he's a teenager, so he doesn't always think that we're fair or we're awful, or we're, this. I mean, the best day of my life, and it sounds funny to people, not really the best day of my life, but like one of the ways that I knew for sure I'm doing this parenting thing right was the day that my teenager told me he hated me because I took his phone away. And that surprises people, but I know that it's the thing of, I know the lessons that he's learning now are going to carry him well into leadership positions, into things, he probably, as most of us do, late teens, early 20s, is probably going to go through some whatever, because we're at the point we're feeling our oats, so to speak. But the one thing I can tell you he doesn't feel is entitled. And it's really kind of interesting with his generation, which is, I guess they're called Gen Z, but like with his generation, they have a whole kind of different take. But everybody from Y on through the baby boomers themselves, it's like this craziness that we keep seeing perpetuated over and over and over again. And then when we don't get our way, well, when people don't, but I mean, it comes out like this, like I think I was telling you, a little while ago that, I keep seeing, since the end of the year here, I keep seeing all these memes going back to either 2020 or 2021, and how 2022, I'm not listening to you until you, like there's some, and I'm like, let it go. Just let it go. Okay, look, the last 2 years definitely did not turn out like any of us thought. In 2021, we all forgot to pencil in pandemic on the calendar. Okay, we all remembered that there was this energy at the end of 2019 that seemed to overtake the entire world, and then through about February 2020, that was like, this is, and it was almost like globally. You could look at social media, even Twitter, that can be so toxic, because Twitter can be at times, as we all know, but it was like everybody was up, and then bam, right? And 2021, of course, everybody's a little bit skeptical because, it's kind of like, but, by the end of 2020, we've been through it enough that your brains are adjusting, and, but by the time we hit a year mark, a lot of the people I knew, we all kind of just went, okay, well, we're going to be dealing with this. So let's just boom, and have things turn, all kinds of things have still been topsy-turvy somewhat through 2021. Neither year turned out the way that most people thought, unless you had absolutely no expectations for either of those years. They definitely did not go the way you might have perceived. Now, in some cases, they may have gone better. In some cases, they went worse. In some cases, it was just like, can we get over this already? Right. But this whole thing about dragging it, letting yourself drag all of that, just what I consider like yucky claws and stuff into this new year. Why?
Who does it serve? What does it serve?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but you and I are both like, working towards, we're going to have solid seven-figure companies at the end of this year. And the thing about it is we have both helped other companies do that. Now, granted, guys, sometimes in the nonprofit world, just as a side note here, it sometimes can be very easy. I mean, now don't take my use of the word easy as meaning easy per se, but to get a nonprofit corporation to $1 million.
Amen.
Within 1 to 2 years.
I agree 100%.
Just because of the nature of how the funding flows and different things like that. But having said that, I personally, I don't feel entitled for anything, but like what a lot of our listeners don't know, or we've probably kind of alluded to it just a little bit. If some of them actually follow me on other social media, they might have seen it, or actually, I haven't even emailed it to my email list. So even if they're on my email list, they don't know this, but like 2021 definitely did not go the way I thought it was going. It started out really strong. It was this, and bam, I catch COVID pneumonia. I'm hospitalized. I'm in the biggest fight of my life ever. And, that stopped because I got clear real fast. And it doesn't, I had even a coach of mine say, well, when you get to what do you want? What kind of house do you want? What kind of car? And I realized that everything that I ever wanted or manifested, I was already driving it or living in it. It was already here. And the second that I realized that last year, after I got to stay here so that I could realize that, thank you very much. Everything else fell into perspective. That 99% of what we say is important really isn't important. When push comes to shove, it isn't important anymore. And I think that when we're hiring people, in particular, or even clients, because in some respects you do hire the client hires you, but you also hire the client, okay? Or we're working within organizations, and however that's going, if one side has some type of sense of entitlement, it never works out well.
No.
You have to work for it. And my company, this company I'm sitting in, this year, we're 21 years old. I say that I've grown up with this company and this company's grown up with me. I've probably made every mistake that you can make. I've made mistakes that I know better, and I cancel clients not to make and help them not make them. And I've still made them in the last 5 years. When I finally just completely retired and decided I was running the company full-time, never looking back, right? I think there's certain things that as business owners and entrepreneurs, we definitely will go through. no matter how many times people tell us, it's almost like this whole thing of like, we got to make that mistake for ourselves because we
Yeah.
just don't quite believe it, right?
Uh-huh.
So.
Can't happen to me. What?
Yeah, what? That can't happen. Okay, guys, we're going to pick this up in just a minute. We're going to take a break for our sponsors and we will be right back.